Sure.
Welcome, everybody, to another episode of the Good Deeds No Investing podcast. I am your co-host, Chris 70, and today I've got a special guest up in the Philadelphia area. Deepta Hiremath is here with us today to just talk notes and other real estate in general. I had reached out to people in the Facebook group Notes and Bolts and had requested people, who wanted to come share their stories, and thankfully you had responded, and I was anxious to get you on because I know Gail has said a lot of great things about you. So, so how are you?
Good. In these trying times, actually, I'm doing very well. I see a lot of buying opportunity now, which is very heartening for in the note space. People are coming out of the woodwork trying to sell me stuff, which is really nice. It keeps me busy. It keeps me occupied. It keeps me out of trouble. So let me just give you guys a background. I am an engineer by profession. I still do some engineering stuff. It's mostly computer science. And I started sometime back in 2005 in my investing career. I realized I love real estate. And I started buying property in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. And then, we had the 2008 crash and we had a ton of short sales, and I'm a realtor, licensed realtor in Pennsylvania, and I started working the short sale market where I would close like about 5 to 10 deals a month. And then it kind of I was schooled by Dave Van Horn, and he's like, "Why are you doing this again? Why can't you just be the bank? Why are you running to Home Depot, doing all this stuff? You shouldn't be doing this." And his words were, "You knucklehead, why are you doing this?" But then then I said, okay, so explain to me. And then he taught me the second mortgage space. I thought it was a hoax. I'm like, who pays on the second mortgages? And he's like, I'm like, this looks too good to be true. And he's like, okay, try it for yourself. You don't have to do anything. And then in short sales also, I was noticing that there were second liens on properties that were being paid on the HUD for about $5,000 to $8,000. And I'm like, Dave, you can only get 5 to 8,000. And he's like, no, that's not true. And that's how I started learning. I learned all about this space. The space has been really wonderful for me. By buying second liens, I also learned about first liens. And they're not as risky as I thought, as long as you do your due diligence. And then as an engineer, I started to simplify all the due diligence stuff. I wrote lots of scripts. I still own them. Actually, people come to me when they have to look at 400-500 loans, and I just go through and scrape all these different things from different websites, and then we can analyze them real quick. So that's how it all started. Looking at all sorts of stuff has been coming across my desk now. So it's been a pretty nice journey. Made quite a bit of money, and it's very funny. But sometimes when when I look at notes on the first pass, I'm like, yeah, this guy's gonna pay for sure, and they surprise me, and they don't. And the ones you're like, no, they're never going to refinance. Guess what? They do, and you're like, wow, what happened here? So it's like it's been like a box of chocolates for me, to paraphrase that.
That is so true. I've had some borrowers, I'm like, there is no way this one's ever going to pay. And I just had one that it's been a thorn in my side for a good 18 months. And basically it's like, I joked to the attorney, I'm like, let's just offer a deed in lieu again, just to see what happens. The person hasn't paid in 18 months, but we know it kind of, he laughed at me when I asked the question. And then he calls me up, he goes, holy shit, she's going to sign it. And I'm like, yeah, she said that last time. He's like, no, like this time she was like serious. And then she actually signed it. And I was like, and then you got people who, who pay all the time, and all of a sudden they just go dark on you. And then it's like, whoa, where'd that come from? And then so I can relate. You've, been around in this space. So you've been around almost 10 years in the space then, correct?
Yeah. And I still haven't gotten used to the pricing that like pre-COVID pricing. I'm like, there's no way I'm going to pay this money for this loan. It makes absolutely no sense. And I'm actually glad to see that they're back in the same ballpark that I started at 10 years ago. And I'm loving it. I'm just loving the fact that, I've realized that people are overpaying, and if ever made notes on what pricing they should never steer from, they will make a lot of money, period.
Yeah, it's interesting. I was speaking with another investor this morning who was talking about a study he did where he bought something that was, low balance, low priced. And, he bought it for like 37 cents on the dollar, but still basically didn't make anything at that because it was such a low priced asset. And, so it's good to see that, share that, because a lot of people who, are paying 50, 60 cents on the dollars for some of this stuff, you look at it and there's no way they're going to make money.
Mm-hmm. They might surprise me and make money, but it's not like it's not a very it's not a calculated risk. Okay, so that's what I've always wondered. Should I take this risk? Should I not? And that's pretty much it. And there are so many caveats. You started the discussion saying, "Hey, what are the gotchas in buying notes?" And the first gotcha is low priced asset and a basically low priced houses. They're really low priced houses or low priced assets. And also the fact that they're overpriced. Even the low priced ones are overpriced. So the price and the asset, like in any part of real estate, that's the biggest risk. Once you know how to manage that, it's a no brainer.
Well, I think also a lot of people in this business that I see, and again, I've been doing this for about 4 years, is people completely ignore risk. I mean, completely ignore it. It's like all they do is, oh, I plugged it into my calculator and this is what it says. And it's, I laugh at that because I'm like, yeah, your calculator is as good as toilet paper in the sense of, you're just guessing. I mean, it's, garbage in, garbage out, whatever you put in there, but you're never going to be right. You're just trying to predict whereabouts you need to be. But at the end of the day, you can have the greatest calculator on the planet, but if you don't know what you're doing or understanding risk, it's worthless.
And a lot of note investors come into the space without going through the brick and mortar, so they don't understand. Like my experience has been, I started from brick and mortar. I know what it takes to rehab a house. I know what it takes to take back a house. I know, like, the city runs behind you for violations. Then you have to hire contractors. And especially in the note business, you're rehabbing remotely. So you're rehabbing from some state. You're in some state. The property is in some state. You need to understand if you are doing the rehab, or at least you're the GC on that, or you are or you're trying to get rid of the property. Who do you call? What do you do? How do you research? How do you get rid of the asset? These are all things that you have to be very aware of, and that is something a real estate investor does know how to do versus a note investor.
No. And yeah, I would add to that a lot of people, get in notes because they don't want to do the real estate side. And I view notes more as like the advanced degree to real estate in that sense, because to be good at it, not only do you need to know, the rehab costs, fix flips and everything else, then you got, the financial aspect of it, which I think is, even greater, because you have to understand first the borrower component, and then understanding, okay, what if they do pay, don't pay, and so forth. And then, you have to look at the second part of that is, okay, and if they don't, what am I going to cost to rehab this and everything else, without even really knowing what the inside of a property looks like. So your risk is much higher. So you need to, I think, be that much more sophisticated.
Right. So you have to plan for the worst and hope for the best. That's how you price an asset.
Yeah.
So it's so there's like so many different points of research. There's data points that I look at before I even buy a note.
Yeah.
So it's like you've got to be really smart and really know all the things, and you need to know what you're getting into.
Oh, I'm laughing because I was just seeing somebody on a website talking about, like, all these advanced strategies in note investing and so forth. And, the person hasn't bought a note. They don't know the difference between an assignment and a launch. And they're trying to like get super creative on like the back end of something. And I made a comment to him. I said, slow down, Nelly, there for a second. You need to understand and learn this process. And that's one thing too, because for me, training in this space is very difficult, that I find, because it's kind of like teaching somebody to do a fix and flip. Unless somebody's going to be with you for the next 12 to 18 months, it's very difficult to learn a lot over the course of a weekend. I don't know what your opinion is on that, but
So I've done it. I've done it through the school of hard knocks, where you've had contractors. You gave them statements of work. You thought you pinned them down. They are in control. Whatever you might say with your pinned down statement of work, at the end of the day, the guy needs to show up and do the work. So you can keep doing what you're doing, but so he's in control, and he can just basically tell me, hey, leave the job, no show. I can do all my due diligence on this contractor, but that doesn't mean he's going to show up to work. So I've learned that. I've fired people, I've sued people, I've done everything on the planet to and there are some good guys and there's some bad guys. You can't really differentiate. But when you're walking into a new relationship with a contractor, it's almost like a marriage at that point for a couple of months. You're married to this guy, and he is basically going to try to squeeze every dollar out of you, and that's pretty much it. So you have to watch out and make sure you have all your checks and balances in place, and you verify that the work is being done, because no amount of them telling it's done, until you see it, you shouldn't be paying them. So you need to have somebody boots on the ground going and checking. Because you can do all these Zoom calls or WhatsApp calls with him, and you look at a ceiling and he's like, yeah, I've spackled it and painted it, but you can't really see. You don't know for sure.
you don't know what quality it
Exactly.
is. Yeah, we've had, we shared, I know Gail shared horror stories of trying to renovate from fire, and I've tried it and I just flat out don't do it. And reason being is, I work full time in the construction industry, and, I've dealt with union contractors who've threatened to throw me off roofs in the past. And I just know, trying to even, I built my single family residence I live in. I built it, and my wife and I were pretty much here almost every day. And still the challenge is to go, and the day we weren't here, everyone would try and cut corners. And, doing it from afar, I can, only imagine, how challenging it is to do from afar. And the people who do it, I respect them greatly, because of the patience you need, and that's the diligence in getting it done. And for me, I just don't know where I would find the time, or, I'm very impatient person. So I would lose my patience very quickly with somebody, and be on my fourth contractor after about 2 weeks.
Right. So I've done two remote rehabs, and the one in Atlanta was really, really good. I was blessed. The
Mm-hmm.
one in Mississippi was not the greatest. So I have really good experience, and I have a decent experience, and I've had really bad experiences too. So it all depends. At the end of the day, it's just luck, who you find and how you get it done. So that's pretty much it. But I would talk more about, there are a lot of things. Your main question was what you wouldn't buy. What are you looking for? What are the gotchas you're looking for when you're buying notes? And I have a litany of them.
Let's hear them.
Okay, so one is, any house under 60 grand is not worth buying. Please don't buy it. You'll be a slumlord. It's not worth it. I don't know if you agree. Do you agree?
So I have bought stuff under 60,000. I mean, I've had some stuff in Gary, Indiana that I've been able to make money on. And for me, it goes a little deeper in the sense of, now, one thing you talk about in that is, if I take a property back, I will not renovate it in those areas, because you're not going to find good contractors and stuff. I would agree that, and I've bought that stuff, but my preference is properties, yes, that are typically between 70 and 150,000 is my preference, is where I'd like to be thinking. Going
I like to
above
go.
that is a little more challenging, because price points get higher.
Yeah, I got you. My sweet spot between 150 and 250.
Okay.
And the reason for that sweet spot is I can rehab it. I can put a tenant buyer in there, and then hopefully they'll buy it at some point.
Hmm.
So that's my sweet spot. Number two is I don't like borrowers that are older, like in the 60, 70 plus range. When I look at a note, I'm looking at their age. And the
Hmm.
reason is because you're looking for a hump. You have, something happened in your life, you went through a spot and you're recovering. So if you're in your 40s and 50s, you have time to recover. At
Hmm.
70 plus, you don't have time to recover. You're on a fixed income. There's nothing much you can do, and the only thing that can happen is you die and some relative wants to stay in the house, wants to keep the house. You do a workout with a relative, or it eventually will get sold, but you don't know that while walking into a note. That I have had a lot of experience with that. What do you have to say, Chris?
Yeah, so I agree. In the sense of, yeah, because you don't want to throw out the 80-year-old lady in the house. Now back to your first comment, the houses that I typically buy that are lower valued, I
Mhm.
typically buy them with older people in them. And the reason I say that is because they are on the fixed income, and if the payments are, $400 or $500 a month, they typically are the ones that have continued to keep paying. So that's kind of my only caveat. But yes, typically I don't like borrowers who are either very young or very old. Now, one of the things I don't like about very young is they, um, in a lot of instances, don't take care of the property, I found, as much. But on the flip side, a lot of them aren't as sophisticated. So when you start legal, they get scared. And when I say young, I mean under 30s from that perspective. But, the sweet spot I find is people who are in, for me, kind of in the age I'm at, which is in the mid 40s, because a lot of people at that age, have families, and the last thing they want to do is move. So,
Then the big one is don't ever get into a note if the borrower is an attorney. He or she will
oh.
make life a living hell. Ask me how I know.
So
So,
I had an asset that I was going after in Florida,
mhm,
and I didn't want it. So somebody I knew was interested in it, and it had a UPB of about, it was $1 million property in Florida where the borrower was an attorney, and it was an investor who wanted to buy it, and they were newer too. But they had a friend who had a lot of money, and I told him, I said, "You are nuts trying to buy this." I said, "It's $1 million property in Florida." I'm like, "You're never going to get this property from this guy, never."
mhm.
And I don't know. I don't think they ended up buying it, but you're right. Taking attorneys is one that. The other one that's interesting, who I've had trouble with, um, is properties that are the borrowers are realtors.
Hmm.
So I've had two of them where they've been very challenging, and the reason being is I think they know more about laws and stuff than they really do. So they think they know how the banks work and like what they can and can't get away with, and they really don't. So I don't know if it's just the borrowers I had, but I've had two realtors that I've had troubles with.
I haven't had problems with the realtor. Actually, I had one in Massachusetts where the realtor was the daughter of the person, the borrower, and she totally got me. And she's like, "Yeah, okay, what do I do?" And she helped her mom refinance the property, so it was a happy ending
Oh,
for me.
nice. What are you
Um,
doing buying in Massachusetts, by the way?
I buy. I have no issues buying in all 50 states. I
so
do not care.
So you just hit on a great point, because a lot of people are scared. And so I've started over the last 6, 8 months. I bought some stuff in New York outside
Mhm,
of the city.
mhm.
And from that perspective, people are like, "Oh, you're nuts." And I'm like, well, it all depends on the price you get it at and knowing what you're getting into. So that's kind of,
Uh,
it was a good, I threw that out there. But, it's interesting because as people get more experienced, you don't care where you just need to
exactly.
understand the rules of the game
Right.
and make sure that you price it accordingly.
Absolutely. And Chris, another important issue is I'm only playing with my money. So my money can be patient. When you're
Yep.
dealing with investor money, it's different because you're like, okay, I need to give them a return. I don't care about the return. I'm just going to sit there, wait. wait. I had one in New York that started in 2012 and ended in 2019.
Oof.
So yeah, it's a long time, and I had to fire three attorneys, do all that stuff because they weren't doing the stuff. With New York, you have to keep on top of the ball, and attorneys, you're just a number in their file. So and they just want to accumulate all these cases and just bill you for nothing. So you have to deal with that. And attorneys, guys, the very important thing is attorneys are like contractors, and you need to treat them like contractors. You need to keep on the ball. Every time an attorney says, okay, we have a motion that's due at certain time, I put it in my phone. And then on that day, I will send him an email saying, hey, what happened to my motion? Did you file it? Or, hey, we have to make an appearance on so and so date for this hearing. The previous night, previous day, in fact, I will send him a note. Are you ready for the appearance? Please let me know as soon as you make it back. Sometimes they forget. How do you forget an appearance? I mean, it's ridiculous. And then you need to go through that bill with a fine tooth comb, because half the time you're like billing for the same thing. And lots of times people who are like, new, they don't get it that,
Mhm.
okay, I'm prepping for an appearance. Okay. Then you attended the appearance. Then you write something else, and and typically what I do is,
Mhm.
because I don't understand these things, I pretend I don't understand. I'm not paying any attorney without going through their bill with them. I'm
Yeah.
like, you're not charging me. You're not charging me to discuss your bill, are you? And they're like, no. Okay, let's go through every line item. What does that mean? You're prepping for it. How many hours did you take? 2 hours. Does it take, so your hour is worth like $200 an hour? Okay, is it $400? Okay, then you went for the hearing. How long did the hearing take? Why am I paying you to sit at the courthouse and you charge me $200? It has to be a reduced rate. You're not using your brain at the courthouse. You're not using your expertise at the courthouse. You're just sitting there waiting, right? So you have to go through that. You've got to go through that with the tenant, with the contractor too. Like the contractor says, okay, it took me all day to go to Home Depot. I'm like, what were you doing all day at Home Depot? I'm not paying you for that day.
Yeah.
So these are things you have to watch out. You have to make sure all your attorneys follow Fannie Mae rates. You have to make sure
Oh,
that they
yes.
charge
That's
a
huge.
yeah, charge a flat fee. And if they charge you hourly, then it's time to let go of them, because the
Yeah.
hourly bills, they
Yeah.
add up.
Yeah, I've got one right now who basically I've told him, I said, I can't afford you anymore, that you gotta, give me even, some things. But I've had, for example, an attorney in Florida who I would never recommend for anything, and they're horrible. And that just goes to show, attorneys range of, some are really bad and some of them are decent. But I had one that was following Fannie Mae and charged me Fannie Mae. And then he's like, well, on top of it, I had to review I had to review the complaint. I had to review this. I had to review that. I'm like, no, that's all part of Fannie Mae's rates. And he's like, oh no, but I said, I'm not paying for you to review, you know, you're paying somebody probably $50 an hour to write a complaint, and
Yeah,
you're charging me that much. I said, I'm not paying. And then they actually filed it incorrectly, had to refile it again. And then
right.
they wanted to charge me the refiling fees. And I'm like, no. And then they gave me some sob story about how they're losing money on this and that, how good of a deal I was getting. I'm like, you charged me at the end of the day like $9,000 for foreclosure in Florida, which was basically, I mean, you should be in prison for that, based on some of the things you're doing. But yeah, it's your attorneys are very important to stay on top of, because time is money. And like you said, I put in my in my same thing in my phone, I'll put I have a specific Google Calendar that is just legal, and I put
Mhm.
in when's the demand letter expire, because if you don't put that in your phone or something, there'll be 30 days, and then 50 days later, like, oh, what's going on? You're like, well, demand letter expired, you didn't tell me what to do, so nothing happened.
Right.
You,
Exactly.
you gotta, continue and keep that ball rolling.
Absolutely. You have to be on top of it. Don't expect the attorney to be on top of it. Like your contractor, don't expect the contractor to be on top of it. It's
Mhm.
your money, and every day that it's not being put to work, you're wasting it. Period.
And same thing with your servicer. If you go online, see somebody hasn't paid and missed a few months and stuff, reach out servicer. It's like, have you, first, what is their responsibility you have for them? But, did they reach out or ask you to reach out? I mean, I have some, loans with a servicer that, they handle the workouts and stuff. And I'll go look and someone hasn't paid in 2 months and I'll look in the servicing notes and I'm like, have you reached out to the person? Like, hello, and they're like, oh no. And it's like, what am I paying you for?
So I don't allow my servicer to do anything of that sort. So
Okay.
I spend like about maybe half an hour every month to see who all have paid,
Yep.
and then as soon as they stop paying, I'm on the ball. I'm calling the attorney and saying send let's do the demand letter.
Yep. So
Um,
I learned that really from Matt Kelly, who kind of, mentioned, when I was getting started in notes and stuff, a lot of people spend so much time trying to work with the borrowers on these things. And I kind of fall into your court now, which is, they miss a payment, I'll talk to a servicer. Some of them will call in, but a lot of them now I've moved over to Allied, who basically I do all same thing. And basically it's like, okay, then, they're not paying, then, whatever time frame hits, I'll turn over and just, send a demand letter. I don't try
that's
and
it.
reach out, do all this workouts with them because they're not going to respond to you. Just let the attorney handle
Yeah.
it.
Yeah. So, and I have pretty much demand letters for every state. So I can send out a demand letter right now by myself. That's what I
Okay.
do. I send out the demand letter. 30 days, I have it in my calendar. I already have the attorney lined up and the attorney files the complaint. No excuses, no nonsense. Just do it, file the complaint. Let's move on.
So that's one thing I haven't moved over to yet is sending my own demands. I know some people
It's very
have.
simple.
Yeah, I
It's,
mean, it's basically once you have sent one in the state, you're literally just changing
yeah.
the name and
Just
then.
name, and it's like and I always negotiate with the attorney. I'm like, before I even hire him, I'm like, how much for the demand letter? He'll say 250. Okay, so Fannie Mae rate in your state is 2,500 minus 250 is
Mhm,
2,470 now that you're dealing with.
mhm,
And then I get my own title searches done because they charge like $300 for a title search and
mhm.
then another 250 to review the title. I'm like, how hard is it to review a title search, for heaven's sake? I mean, read through it. Even I can read through it and figure it out. So I'm like, I reviewed the title. It looks good. You can review it, but you're not getting paid for it.
Yeah. So yeah, I've that typically I always order my own title. There's a few states where I'll have the attorney still do it because some of the title companies I use. There's a few quirky states. I can't think of them right now. I think Alabama is one of them that's a little more challenging to find title companies. And but I've since been using Meridian Title, who's basically been able to cover a lot of my states.
I use Pro Title
Oh,
because
you just use
Alex.
Pro Title? Yep. So okay, so you use Pro Title for everything. So
Yeah,
I've
I
had
use Pro
some.
Title. I use them for everything. I use Alex because Alex is like half an hour away from me.
I was gonna say you can go beat on his door.
If I want to. And if I'm researching loans, I get the $1 title search done. If I'm in doubt, I get that, $1 thing. So it's pretty cool. It just gives me, if there what mortgages on the property, if there are any liens, and that's about it. Sometimes I use it because if I like a note really quite a bit, then I will pay the $1 and get that done.
What? I haven't heard that, the $1 one.
Okay, you go to if you call Alex, you ask him for the $1 title search. It's basically it's not like a formal title. They'll just give you the liens, the last few liens, and if there are any mortgages on the property. So
Okay, yeah.
yeah, so
Okay,
you
yeah.
can like go to Realty Track and RPR and kind of see it.
Mhm,
But let's say, for instance, that the property was like if you go to Realty Track on RPR, you can see like okay, what was the first lender, but you really can't see who's the most current lender. You can
mhm,
do that with a credit report, kind of go through the credit report and figure out, okay, who's the latest one. But with him, you just pay $1 and you can get that information and then you
okay.
can match it up if you'd like.
Okay, yeah. I use something called Data Tree, which kind of gives the
Yes.
same similar
Yeah.
similar information.
Data. Yeah. It's exactly the same thing.
Mhm,
Just, it's like, within 24 hours, you get the same thing. And you can do this bulk thing with him too, where you
mhm,
send him, how many other properties you're looking at.
yeah.
I think data tree is pretty expensive. I don't know what it costs.
Yeah, it fluctuates. So I've been a member with them for like 3, 4 years. So I got in at a very good price back in the day, and it's basically like it's a buy down. So basically, if say you're paying $100 a month, you get to use $100 worth of reports. So like if you ordered one, you can order an O&E report from them, and it would cover basically your cost for the month. So it's, I can order things there. Like I can find out same thing, like how many liens are on the properties. If there's HOA liens on the properties, I can see if get the borrower, same thing. Who's the borrower on title? Does borrower have other properties that they own? Which I find very useful, because if, a lot of times that you get properties that, person bought as a rental, then they want to let it go. And then all of a sudden, they're living in a $750,000 house with no mortgage, and, they think, oh, nothing's going to happen if I let that one walk, not realizing that, a judgment could appear and get slapped on that property. So, so yeah, it's, you can get a lot of useful information from Data Tree, and order a lot of reports from them as well. So.
Right. So, and I'll tell you what I love about certain notes. Anybody who's a lender who works for a bank, I love those notes.
Okay.
And the reason why is because they can declare bankruptcy. They can't. Period. Doesn't matter what it is, they can't. So.
Well, they can, but they'll lose their job, right?
Right. Exactly. And nobody wants to lose their job over this bankruptcy thing. So they are definitely, so I love bankers. I love anybody who has a job, like a white collar job, because you can serve them at their place of work, and they don't like that.
Yeah.
Police officers, I love them. People in the services, because you can call their commanding officer and say, hey, I'm trying to reach so and so. Can you please ask them to call me? There's some unpaid bills. That's all you have to say. So I love those kind of people. Somebody who has a steady job, whether they work at a Home Depot or Costco, or is a white collar person, a doctor, engineer. And then I like people. And another thing, I don't like people who are like self-employed, because they'll come up with everything in the book to basically not pay you. They'll any kind of scam. They can declare bankruptcy. They can do all these things and just delay the inevitable.
Well, that falls into like contractors, because,
Exactly.
you have contractors. If you've never seen a contractor's house, it will never be 100% finished. It'll never be more than 90% finished, because a contractor will get to a certain point where they can live in the house, and then they never finish it because they're too busy working on other people's houses. So that's one, that I've known for a long time. When I was going to build a house back in early 2000s, that's what somebody told me. They said, go to a contractor's house and look at their house. They said, if they finish their house, that's a good contractor. And the first three I went to, you walk in, their houses weren't done. And it's an example of, so you can't do their own house, where they can do yours.
Exactly. So those, I mean, and any white collar worker, I love those guys. I mean, it's so, they, as soon as you send, a lot of them, as soon as you send the demand letter, they're like, okay, don't tell my wife. Let's figure out how to take care of this.
Do you run credit reports?
Yes, I do. Yeah, I do. And I basically am the gotchas in a credit report is I'm just reading. When I look at a credit report, it's like reading a story about this person's life. And I'm looking for the typical, something happened. I'm looking for that little curve where something happened, he's back on track or whatever. And a report, the thing I always emphasize, a report needs to be 3 to 4, I mean max 5 to 6 pages long. If it's like a book, like 30 pages, then it's not a report, guys. It's like somebody who's like in a deep hole, and there's nothing you can do to get them out of it. So I'm looking at and the things I'm looking at the credit report are basically to see that, what happened. They jumped off a cliff. Are they back yet? And I'm looking at like, okay, so they had, and it tells kind of a nice, concise picture of, gives you a concise picture of their life. You'll see some medical bills. Okay, they had some issue. They had some medical issues. And if you look at a borrower, basically there are 3 big problems in life. That's it. All life can be thrown into 3 buckets. And what are those 3 buckets? job loss, right? Job loss or reduction in income. What's the next one? It's some medical issue. They had a medical issue. And what's the last one? They got divorced or there was a love issue. That's it. If you can simplify life into three buckets, that's all life's problems are. Once you know, okay, when I'm looking at the credit report, I'm looking, okay, so he had a medical issue. Or if he had a divorce, I can see that. And then I know what's going to happen to this person.
Yep.
And that's all you have to look at, and look at the age. And sometimes I do look at employment. I do a Google search on the borrower to see if they're employed or not, and that's good enough. And there's so many ways actually. On Facebook I have a lot of borrowers who are my friends, and I track them. I see, the guy's gone on a vacation. Okay, is he going to pay me to next month? And that's the reason why I don't share any information about my family. I'm always in closed groups. You'll never see me telling you about my vacation or my family or any of that stuff, because a lot of my borrowers are friends with me on Facebook, and I'm watching them real close.
Wow, I haven't gotten that far. I did have a borrower recently take his wife on a vacation for their 10th anniversary, who hasn't paid their mortgage in about 18 months. And what I found amazing with this borrower is, and I don't know if you've witnessed this in some of your past, but it's amazing how borrowers can juggle a bank account to keep it closest to zero. It's like the price is right. Let's keep it as close to zero without going under zero. I've seen bank statements every month come back at like 67 cents, $1.27, $2.36. And that's not just one month. That's like every single month. And I'm like, that's hard work to try. I mean, if you told me I had to balance my account at a specific number every month, and I'm like, and they're doing it literally. And these are on some loans where people aren't even paying. And that's one of the challenges sometimes you have with them is having that conversation. It's like, you really can't afford this house,
Right. Right.
and
So
there's so
when
much equity, so much, invested
uh,
personally to it, from that
so
from,
when I do a workout, right? So as you know, I just send the demand letter. I don't talk to the borrower. It's like I liken the foreclosure process to like a bullet train. Nothing's going to stop it. The
yeah,
only way you're going to stop it is when you put money down at the speeding train. That's when it stops. If there's no money, it just runs off the track.
yeah,
So typically they call me. They call me like a day before the sale or something. It's so ridiculous, and I'm like, I had this experience with this guy in Florida. He calls me up and he's like, well, I saw this notice from the sheriff. I'm like, okay. It says I have to move out in 24 hours. Okay. And then he's like, so what's your advice? I'm like, start packing then, right? What's my advice? Then he's like, I want to really stay. I'm like, okay, so explain to me. He was working for a car dealership or something. Explain to me, how much does it cost to rent the same place somewhere else? It's like, $2,000. I'm like, that includes first month, last month, 1 month security, right? So I said, yeah. So then he's like, what does it cost to reinstate? I said, $2,000. He's like, I have $500. What's your advice? I'm like, start packing. Then he calls me back in 2 hours and he's like, I have the $2,000. I'm like, okay, here's the bank account, go deposit it. Once you deposit, I'll talk to my attorney and stop the foreclosure. So they don't seem to get it that you're serious until you really are serious. And that's what a lot of investors, I don't know why they're so they believe good things. I mean, everybody wants to do good, but you are in the business of making money, guys, and the way you're going to make money is, I mean, you owe responsibility to your family. And until you collect that mortgage payment, or you collect that sale proceeds, you're not doing good by your family. You don't have to do good by others. Your responsibility is towards your family.
yeah. My first foreclosure was a property where, basically the war, and it was just after the holiday. It was in early February, and the borrower called, the attorney the day before, like in tears and crying and stuff. And I asked the attorney, I said, hey, look, this is my first one. What are your I know you can't recommend anything, but I said, what have you seen in the past? She said 90% of people who cancel a foreclosure end up going back into foreclosure within the next 3 to 4 months. And basically, and this woman, actually, I could find her Facebook profile, and she was on Facebook. She was going out to all the holiday parties and everything else. And, we had asked, same thing, we asked for $2,000. She said, I only have $300. And basically, so we ended up foreclosing on her. And you brought up a good point where I think people sometimes are, you try and do the right thing by keeping the borrower in the property, but there comes a point in time where, you need to really just look at it from a business perspective. And like I said, back to when you see somebody hasn't made a payment in a year and they balance their checkbook with $1 in it every month, you're not doing that person any favors by keeping them in that property, and, you're
Absolutely.
just hurting your investment.
Right. And also when I look at, when a borrower calls me and says, okay, let's do a workout, we go through, I'm like, okay, everything has to be validated, but let's go through, and we go through expenses. What's your gas bill? What's your cable bill? What's your electric bill? What's your insurance? How much does it pay? And go through everything. And then clearly, sometimes I'm like, you have no money left at the end of the day. How are you going to afford this house? Maybe it's time to think about selling it. And that's the time when they're like, oh well, my son pays me, that this car really is owned by my son, I'm driving it, and they're trying to convince me how they can afford to live there. And like I'm like, it's clearly we need to sell this, clearly we need to do this, and they're like, no, no, no. And that's when the truth comes out. My son helps me, it's really my daughter pays the electric bill, whatever it is. And then finally at some point I'm like, okay, so based on this is what you can pay. Is that true? Is that a true statement? And then I get all the bank statements and all that other stuff, that I'm making notes and verifying everything. And then I look at these bank statements and I'm like, why are you paying $30 for overdraft? Clearly you can't afford this. How do you pay these kind of prices? I mean, like, why did you check your balance at the ATM? That's costing you $3. I don't get it.
And whatever
And you see
someone
all
puts,
these different, they eat at McDonald's. Hmm?
I was gonna say, and whatever somebody puts on the paper, they'll say, "Oh, my expenses are $800 a month." Whatever that is, basically, pretty much multiplied by 50%. And when you get the bank statement, you'll verify it, because people are like, "Oh, well, I've got my cell phone bill of 150, my cable bill's 150, then I've got Netflix, then I have, and then how much did they spend at Amazon?" It's the whole disposable income thing that they spend. That's why I actually like to reference a lot of times the VA has some guidance based on what disposable income should be for the number of people in your household by region and stuff. And so I'll pull that out, especially when I'm reviewing loan mods with people, because if I reject it and go to foreclosure, I've had in mediation, but some foreclosures, they'll be like, how'd you, why didn't you approve them? And I said, well, I used the government standards, so I said, I'm just following what everyone else does, versus trying to create my
And
own.
I've been in mediation. I've always known that it never goes well for anybody, not for the borrower, not for the lender. So mediation is something that it doesn't seem to be in anybody's favor, really, including the borrower itself. It just delays the inevitable. You're like, and I've been in so many cases where the mediator thinks the property is not valued, and I'm like dealing with appraiser, dealing with this. I had one in Brooklyn recently where the mediator thought there was the property was not worth what it was worth, and we found out that that's not the true statement. So, and then the mediator said, okay, done. And it just delays the process. It delays what needs to happen.
Yeah, and all it does is it puts them, also further behind the eight ball in many instances, if they, were trying to come up with
Exactly.
something as well. So it's, and what it does
and
is
and
the
lots
person
of
might
people
have to
now,
leave. Oh, go ahead.
yeah. Right now with the COVID thing, there are a lot of people who are coming to me and saying, hey, I don't want to pay my mortgage. And I'm like, you have two choices. You don't pay your mortgage, and You just wait 3 months. Okay, you want a reprieve in 3 months? Okay, great. Then after 3 months, you know that all three payments are due, right? And they're
Yeah.
like, no. And that, no, just read that for a minute. It,
Yeah.
all three payments are due,
Mhm.
and I am helping you. And there are a lot of assistants. I can, like, there's a lady in New York. I'm like, here's the link to the assistants. Go and look at that website and get the money that they're giving you to pay your loan. I don't get it why you don't want to go there. And I'm asking for proof. I'm like, okay, just because the coronavirus doesn't mean, I need to see that you really got laid off. I really need to see this lady was babysitting or something, so her employer sent her a note. That doesn't mean anything. Why are you not taking government assistance? Because you can't prove it.
Yeah.
So, coming up with excuses for the coronavirus is not going to work.
Yeah. So I had a question that just popped in my head because it just reminded me about a borrower I had with coronavirus. You buy loans in bankruptcy.
Oh, yes. Um, Again, you have to be very careful with them, because you have to check if they're 7 or 13.
Yep.
And my deal is, if you're a thief, you're always a thief. So I'm checking when I do due diligence on a pool of notes. I'm checking for bankruptcy. I'm checking what chapter, checking
Hmm.
when they declared bankruptcy. So if you declared bankruptcy 10 years ago, that's fine. And if you had a chapter 13, I'm checking if the lien was stripped or not. If it
Hmm.
was stripped, guess what, I'm not buying that loan.
Yeah.
But if it wasn't stripped, I'll buy it, because I know that I will get paid. We just have to do a transfer of claim and file a transfer of claim and get paid. Or if the lien has not been stripped, we can address it once they complete the bankruptcy and we start foreclosure proceedings. When the borrower somehow conveniently thinks that his lien vanished after the bankruptcy. And this has happened in Chapter 7 cases where people think, oh, I declared Chapter 7, everything is fine, I'm a fresh start. Well, no, the property still owes the loan. You don't, but the property does. So if you want to stay in the property, then you have to pay.
Yeah. So I've got, so I love 13s in the sense of if I'm doing due diligence on a note and the person's been in chapter 13 for, if they're if they have filed many times, I usually won't get involved in that note because they know how to scam the system. But notes that are currently in Chapter 13, if they've been in
Mhm.
there for 12 to 24 months or longer, I will pick those up all day long because, and again, you look at the plan and, if the plan's a 60-month plan and the person's right around 20 to 30 months in, they're halfway to daylight. And you can see, when you run the report in Pacer, that, yeah, they had some medical bills, they had a lot of credit card debt. That credit card debt all goes away if they can make it through this.
Right.
So, I've had very good luck in some of those. Chapter 7s, it's funny, I have a borrower now who filed Chapter 7. It was investment property and basically never signed a reaffirmation agreement and has renters in there. And the servicer's like, hey, we can't do anything. The person had been making some payments, but, you can't go collect that money. So basically, I just told the attorney, let's just go foreclose on the property.
Yeah, yeah. Talking about the reaffirmation, I don't care about your reaffirmation. You don't affirm it, I don't. Doesn't matter. We'll foreclose.
Yep. So, but yeah.
So
So
yeah, so chapter, and I don't like this chapter 20 business that I've been reading about. It's a total
I got
scam.
I got one right now. I got a chapter 20 right now. They did a
Oh
seven.
my,
They did a 7 and flipped it to a 13. So it's chapter
yeah,
20.
I hate
And,
it. I
yep.
hate that. I hate it.
Yep.
It's
So
it's double dipping, and somebody needs to some big banks need to step up and say no. This is not allowed. You're gaming the system.
well, that's the first thing I asked my attorney. I'm like, wait a second, this person filed chapter 7, said they wanted to keep the property, didn't make any payments and so forth. Get it approved, and then turn around. Literally, I filed, because we'd sent the demand letter, we filed the complaint, they get the complaint, and all of a sudden now it's like, oh, now chapter 13. And the interesting thing though is, we got the plan submitted. The arrears are, or pre-petition is like 29,000. So their payments are going to be about 500 a month on top of their payment, which was about 700 a month. So at the end of the day, if they want to pay me $1,200 a month, I'll actually take it for this loan. But we all know where it's headed. I mean, they're gonna, actually, I got a notice yesterday because we know where it's headed, that the person hasn't filed tax returns in 2 years. So the trustees are saying, we're not approving this plan because the borrower's never filed tax
Dismissed,
returns.
dismissed for lack of documentation or something. It shows
Yep.
up in a
So,
lot of time. Um, so yeah, and bankruptcy laws are changing. A lot of things changing. So you need to be very careful. As I can't stress enough, due diligence is the key to success in this business. So you have to read a lot, know what the new rules are, what the laws are, what is statute of limitation, what are lending licensing requirements. All these things you need to understand and use. I mean, these are all tools. Like a contractor can't fix a house without a screwdriver and a hammer and a chainsaw and chisel and all these other power tools. These are all power tools you need to have, so you know exactly how to use them.
well, it's
And
funny.
lots of time,
I was gonna say, it's funny you mention that because I just got a tape the other day from somebody, and 90% of the assets on there had all passed statute of limitations. I mean, some of
yeah,
them they haven't had payments in 15 years, and I'm like, and I know in one state, I'm like, it's a 7-year statute of limitation. I'm like, you can't get anything for this. I mean, you can't even collect it. So,
yeah. So
and
you
people,
have to watch those tools. You have to, and a lot of times, like, please do not ask an attorney for business advice. He's the wrong person to ask. So you have to be cognizant of the rules, and you need to sometimes teach your attorney, hey, if can I do a suit or note versus a foreclosure? You think that's more beneficial? Ask him legal advice.
yes. Don't ask them tax advice. I know
Oh,
people ask
please.
their attorney tax advice. I'm like, that's the worst person. And everyone always thinks like, oh, well, my LLC, the thing people always confuse too is like, oh, I got an LLC for taxes. And I'm like, LLC does nothing for you on taxes. It's asset protection.
That's
And,
right.
from that, and people, try and get one thing. And I'm curious to your opinion on this because you've been in this business a while. I see, sometimes, people, basically try and get too cute and creative on certain things, whether it's, setting up their business or, trying to do, creativity with like notes or trying to do certain things, whether, and even like and again, use your own money, but with other people's money and stuff. I see a lot of that, and it just makes me want to rip my hair out and scream. I don't know if you've witnessed that as well.
No, do not get creative with other people. Yeah, do not get creative with other people's money. Get creative with your own money. You're going to lose it. That's fine, but not with other people's money. You will end up with the SEC.
Yeah.
So don't do that. Orange suits are not good in this business. Whatever you do, just remember and do it legally, guys. Don't go and change locks and get on TV. Please don't do that. Be with the sheriff to evict the person after a foreclosure. Let the legal process take its due course. Don't show up and start rehabbing it right after the foreclosure sale because you feel it's abandoned. Don't do dumb things like that. Wait for a month. It's not going to kill you if you wait for a month and have the sheriff show up, and the sheriff documents that he showed up and he gave you permission to change the locks. It's no big deal.
Mhm.
Do it the right way and you should be fine.
Yeah, I mean, I saw the report about landlords and people taking, their social security numbers to check if people got the stimulus money and stuff. And I see that. I'm like, oh my God, they're going to be in prison. It's like, and, I saw a comment even the other day of, somebody, out there like pulling people's credit reports on things. And I'm like, even that, I'm like, even if it says, that, one law says that you might be able to do it, I'm like, whatever you do, if something is questionable, run it by your attorney. I mean, my attorney, I have on speed dial and I run 1,000 things by him. And sometimes he goes, no, you can't do that. And it's like, good. I'm glad I know that. But,
Yeah,
just, you got to be smart.
absolutely. And Fred, I mean, don't do dumb things and don't say dumb things to your borrowers. Anytime they ask you, hey, do you think I should do this? I'm like, I don't know. Contact your local attorney and talk to them. I am only here to collect on the loan. I don't know anything else.
Don't give them advice.
Absolutely.
And
Absolutely.
yeah, don't give them advice. Don't threaten them.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
That is true for all tenants and all people who do not belong to your immediate family. Do not threaten.
Yeah, I mean, the way I've operated my business is anytime it gets to a point of conflict in the sense of like, you know, if something isn't working out, whether it's a tenant or a borrower, you know, basically it's like, you know, and they'll ask them, I said, okay, I'm turning this over to my attorney and basically, you know, let them deal with it because, you know, from that perspective, because sometimes it can get contentious and I'm not going to be put in that position. I'll basically, you know, make an offer to somebody if
It's, I
you.
have a better position than you, Chris, because I'm a woman. I'm a woman, so I'm like my boss. He's the big mean guy. You can
Yeah.
talk to him. And I just cool my friend. I'm like, dude, can you just tell them that, you know, I work for you and I have to listen to them. And if that doesn't work, then it goes to the attorney.
Well, yeah, that's one thing I do is I always tell whenever you know, I speak to people, it's like, you know, I always make it sound like there's another decision maker. And, you know, it's basically, it's like, hey, I got to bring this to the powers to be, whether powers to be are you, your dog, your fish, whatever it is, you know, whoever makes the decision, you know, but, you know, you know, you typically, I never make a decision on the spot with somebody. I always, you know, I'll be like, let me review it. I'll get back to you. And I'll get back to you within 24, 48 hours. You know, from that sense. So.
Mhm. So it's important to have a good team and important to manage your business and make calculated decisions, and be responsible for your own decisions.
Yeah.
And that's pretty much you. I can guarantee you success in any field if you follow that advice.
Yeah. And the one thing I'll add to that is, you know, treat it like a business. You know, there's a big difference between a note investor and having a note business. You know, people, you know, that, you know, do their own taxes or don't know how to do taxes and they ask these questions. It's like, you know, and it's one thing, yes, certain people are qualified to do their taxes, but when people, you know, ask the question of how do I break out the principal and the interest on my, you know, in QuickBooks, it's like, you know, either if you're serious about a business, get somebody to do it, or you can go take 20 hours to learn QuickBooks, which to me, I don't think is worth it, but, you know, to you, maybe it is. But it's like, get serious about your business, you know, in that sense. You know, you're asking fundamental questions like things like that. That's business 101. So things like that. And it's not a knock if you don't know the answer, but, you know, figure it out in the sense of if you want to be serious, you know, that's something that you should definitely know how to read books, you know, read your P&L and balance statements.
Right. And I hate accounting. So for me, it's like I put my entries in QuickBooks, and I'm like, okay, let me outsource whatever I hate. I outsource. So I'm like, and I have this discussion with my tax guy every year, and I'm like, okay, Chris, this is what I need to do. Is this what I need to do? And he's like, yeah, let's plan ahead so we know what we're getting into.
Mm-hmm.
And that's pretty much it. I just hate accounting. It takes away from the fun stuff.
No,
The you
yes.
know
Yeah.
the fun stuff is buying the stuff, buying the product, figuring it out,
Mm-hmm.
and then it's all mechanics, right? It's the attorney does everything. You just sit back and you just there's nothing else to do.
Yeah, the fun is buying. You know, you can have attorneys
Exactly.
do the foreclosures, you know, your collateral and stuff. You have companies that can record and do all that for you.
Yeah,
Same thing with the bookkeeping
everything.
and stuff. I said the fun part is getting a tape, breaking it down, wondering if you're going to buy it. That's what I enjoy. That's what I love to do. And
Yeah,
that's basically
yeah,
that's the only thing I do with my business, and I outsource everything else.
exactly. So focus on your core competency.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah.
And
So
you will succeed because the more you look at, the more stuff you can buy.
no, that is true. So we're wrapping up on about an hour. So I just
Yeah,
wanted to grab any final thoughts, anything. And also if people wanted to reach out to you or ask you a question, is there a
sure,
place where they can?
sure. Yeah, my focus has always been on marketing, so try to market as much as possible, look at as many tapes as possible. That is my final thought. Reach out to investors, reach out to people, find out if there are notes. There's plenty of stuff right now, so there should be absolutely no problem securing some really good ones.
Mhm.
And if you want to reach out to me, give me a call. 267-218-1543 is my phone number. Text me before you call, so that way I could be in a meeting, I could be, doing something important. So you can text me, and I can set an you can set a time, and I'm always willing to listen to people who don't have deals or have deals who want some help. I have so many people reach out to me. I'm also on Facebook. I'm on Chris's group, so you can reach out via Facebook. I am any way that you like, and I will be always willing to answer questions. I like to help people. Run. Feel free to run anything by me that's business related.
Yeah. And one thing I'll comment, because marketing is very important for every business, but you got to know where to market. And if you're looking for tapes and stuff like that, I see people like, posting a lot in like Facebook groups and stuff like that. But it's great to get to know people in those groups. But most of the time, you're really not going to find good tapes in Facebook groups and stuff. It's more, networking and,
I use the
go ahead.
Yeah. I use Lane Guide all the time. I make phone calls to CEOs of banks, and I also have a very good group. A lot of my business most of the time is done via text. Somebody texts me about a loan, and I'm like, okay, let's look at it. I look at it, I make an offer. I am of the philosophy that if I don't make an offer, then I'm wasting my time. So I'll make an offer on anything. I'll
Mhm.
make an offer, and they know I'm good for it. If I say I'm going to buy it, I'll buy it. And they know that. So they would rather have me buy it than put it out on Facebook and waste their time.
Yep. So good points. So, well, Deepta, thanks for joining us today, and it's a pleasure as always. And people want to reach out to you. You've got your contact information. So, thanks for coming on today.
Thanks, Chris. It was fun.